The question is, am I still studying KI? Yeah, I'm still studying KI. Uh, KI was a huge breakthrough for me. It's not like it was my first sword art, but the way that it was introduced to me, with the amount of detail that it was introduced, um, I actually found it game changing. I just had so many things that I could pursue, um, so many details that I could pursue and bring myself closer to what it was I wanted to accomplish in a fight, like not dying and preventing my opponent from doing any damage to me. That, yeah, I will always be studying KI. And, and I've actually been really fortunate because I basically followed the breadcrumbs that my previous teacher had set out for me, and those those crumbs led me to take a look at everybody else that studied KI, um, and it's been really really revealing. One of my favorite parts of that was the first time I went to Australia. I made a special trip out to Sydney to go and see Ray Floro, and it was just out of respect, really, knowing that he was there back in the day when all of the pillars were there studying the system, and I just wanted to show up, show my respects, spar with the man because he was one of the proponents that was always saying, "You need to spar, you need to spar," and so we sparred, and it was a great day, and you can read about that in my old posts. But recently, not having any further access to my previous training, I began to look at Ray Floro's work, and it's interesting because I went from looking at all this detail, and from a standpoint of like, it takes a really specific type of intelligence to understand this material, to someone who's saying it's really simple, it's very straightforward, and I'm going to present it to you simply in a straightforward manner, and if you choose to pick it up, you'll pick it up. And it's amazing because I'm watching his videos, and his teaching style actually reminds me a lot of my own teaching style, because he's very kinesthetic and principled. So his teaching style is kinesthetic and principled, and he's only looking for what works in the fight, because he's a fighter. And so it's really neat. I've been seeing connections between the different techniques, between all this specificity. I've been seeing connections and finding ways to train those connections that I saw. And every time I go back to look at his videos, it's like, oh, confirmation, confirmation, confirmation. And I occasionally actually get to text chat with him online, and it's always just enthusiastic, like excitement about like, oh, you're seeing that, and it's like, oh, okay. And so it's really good. Yes, the answer is I'm still studying KI, and we're training KI. We put about 6 hours a week into training it, which in my opinion is different than conditioning. This is specifically training the body to do the right thing at full speed, under duress, and specifically to see what is the right thing. Can you see what's coming up? Can you make the right choices? Can you be in the right place? So while I continue to hold on to everything I've gleaned from my previous teachers, I continue to look forward. And I think at some point in the future, when I've gone through Floro's work many times, I will start looking at um, other teachers. Some of my students are doing some fantastic work out west and working with other people who have a strong connection to Tan's system. Um, so we will add that in. However, my previous teacher inspired me in so many ways that I'm certain he doesn't realize. Um, but I've been looking at the larger historical perspective of where did KI actually come from? Because it is a hybridized art, meaning it isn't just that the Illustrissimo family developed this thing and it stayed that thing forever, because as I understand it, it started out as a very simple system, and it was added to through his travels, but to Tan's travels, but also was added to through colonization. And while I previously looked at colonization as being explicitly a Christianity driven thing, I've recently come to realize the very obvious fact that there was also a very Islamic motivated um, diaspora of information and technology that was coming down through the opposite side of the Malay archipelago, meaning through Malaysia, Borneo, Indonesia, uh, all the way out to the southern part of the Philippines, and probably somewhat beyond that. So now I'm looking at backtracking the origin arts. So while I already had some understanding and some study in the historical European medieval martial arts, but more specifically Bolognese and Destrezza, um, I've become aware of Eskrima Común and the arts that were the precursor to what we saw in the late colonization era. Um, and then, but if you backtrack on the Islamic side, you end up going back through Indonesia and what Indonesia and Borneo were prior to Dutch colonization, and you see the Ottoman Empire influencing the martial arts, the technology, the training methods, and I'm backtracking that now. So am I still studying sword? Absolutely. And is sword getting more and more interesting for me? Absolutely. Because one of the things that became very apparent to me is that while the martial arts and the martial practices that were associated to the sword changed over times, the swords themselves changed over time. And no matter what the sword started out as, they pretty much all ended up as a saber or a cutlass, basically a machete with a handguard. And that is what I'm looking at. And that is where I'm heading. Of course, that's just for interest. All of this background stuff, is really, really interesting. I love hearing about the histories and learning about the histories, but there are people who are far more capable of doing a historical study than I am. I don't remember dates and names very well, but I do retain the big picture. What I've always been interested in, and will always be interested in, is looking at all the different educational methodologies and looking at which educational methodologies and exercises, drills, techniques, which of those I can enter into my personal experience and add to my personal skill set so that I am a more capable combatant. And that is my objective. It's always been my objective. I look for capacity. I don't care about lineage. I don't care about association. I think some people would expect me to be apologetic about that, but I've never been that type of student. I've always been someone who does do the fighting. I've always been someone who wants to see how I stand up against others. And so that's the direction my training takes, and that's the direction I take my students. It's not about giving you access to, some sort of a claim to association with famous people. It's what do famous people do, and how do they become that way? What do famous systems do? Why did that last? And how do we take that into our own practice, and how do we push ourselves towards those ideals so that we can perform in accordance with those ideals? So, for those of you who are wondering what it is I'm going to be teaching in my seminars, I'm just going to be sharing, how do I become more effective? What have I learned from my various sources that has helped me become more effective? What strategies have I been able to make work? What strategies have I not been able to make work? But mostly, which ones have I been able to make work? And how do we get ourselves to approach those skills so that we can consistently pull them off in a real fight or spar challenge? And yeah, so I'm definitely still doing it. I welcome anybody who's interested to come and learn from it. I am opening the doors wide open. I know I did a few years there where I was not really sharing openly. And that was due to being involved in a relationship that expected that kind of privacy. But I've seen since that they've published, and there's really no secrets anymore. They've published, and anything that would be considered secret, from what I can tell, has been written. So no real point in me keeping secretive now that everything's out in the open anyway. So here we go. If you're interested in studying sword with me, you can do that. I'm available in my classes. I'm available online. I do expect people to have some basic understanding of what we're working on for their own safety and the safety of their training partners. But if you're interested in taking a serious look at swordplay, we're doing that. Anyway, have a great day.